All right. You know, I got a little jealous earlier with the dancers. You know, I was doing the dance moves. Hopefully everybody else was. And I was saying, my God, my presentation is going to be kind of boring in comparison, and especially this late in the afternoon. If you haven't had your afternoon coffee, I'd like to kind of start off with an exercise. So let's get a little dance moves going here. So I want everybody who feels like they do complex work in their workplace, if you do complex work, please stand up. So stand up if you do complex work. And if you want to do a dance move, you can. I'll use that time to pour my water. Feel free to use what you've learned today. All right, so now most everybody's standing. We do complex work in the workplace. Now I want you to sit down if you feel like you're constantly interrupted at work. Okay? Therein lies the rub. We have a major problem. We understand that we're doing complex work, yet we also understand that we're living in a perpetual state of distraction, right? What do we do about this? Brain research has been clear that there is a connection between our cognitive abilities and how we're distracted. In other words, this perpetual state of distraction, and what we've seen where I work at the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction in the United States, is that our inability to stay focused for a sustainable amount of time is depleting our ability to do these high cognitive tasks. All right. When we think of our workplace, I want you to think about that, right? How long can you and how long can your fellow workers go without being interrupted? Because what we're looking at today, to give you the meta picture, what we're looking at is saying, this is the 21st century. Are we still approaching this issue of the workplace in a 20th century mentality? Are we still treating our employees? Are we still treating the workplace as a kind of factory mentality? Because in a factory mentality, what were you producing? You were producing widgets. We've gone from physical widgets to now the widgets that sit on our phone. The important part is, and what we're trying to struggle with, is how do we maximize the productivity of a knowledge worker? And more importantly, what does it even mean to be a knowledge worker? What maximizes our productivity? Because there is not a linear relationship between the time invested and the productivity of somebody who needs creativity and high cognitive skills. So with this question, how long can we go without being interrupted? Studies have shown 3 minutes. Think about that. I'm speaking for 20 minutes. Think about the amount of time. So you're interrupted about 6 times. I want you to also visualize right now. Think of a nice pretty picture. I have a lot of pretty pictures, hopefully, in these slides. Think about when you get the best work done, right? You're sitting on a beach somewhere. Maybe you took a hike. Why do I ask that? Because when you are thinking most clearly, when you are having your aha moments, those are not the times when you're being distracted, when you just received an instant message, when somebody knocks on the door. It's when you get into that state of flow, when you get into that state where you actually have a sustainable amount of time where you can get to a deeper level of thought. The important part, and the part of this presentation, is that our modern workplace requires an environment where we can have those sustainable periods of time. This is not just food for thought. This is not just a feel-good. Listen, I'm an American. Everything comes down to money in the U.S. This affects the bottom line. So if we were talking about the bottom line here, think about what that same study also found, that nearly almost 10,000 euros of lost production a year because of that amount of interrupted loss of time and loss of focus. So you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, if there's not a linear relationship with time, what does it matter? Does it matter how much we're getting interrupted? The answer is yes, because of how we need to get to that deep level of thought. We also find that once you are interrupted, it can take nearly 23 minutes to get back to that state, to get back to that deeper state where you are thinking clearly when you can have a deep level of thought. Here's why this topic is complicated. Distractions are not as simple as an external way, right? It affects the external and the internal. What I mean by that is the workplace has to be conducive for sustained periods of time where a person can think, where an employee can think. But we also need to solve the internal issues of how we, as a worker, as an employee, how we are easily distracted. Because here's something we oftentimes don't talk about, that I haven't heard a lot yet today. We not only get distracted, we might have a desire to be distracted, right? You wonder why our tech companies make so much money. Sometimes we have a desire to quickly check our phone, right? As earlier talks have discussed, the dopamine connection, as we work with at the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction. So we need a two-prong approach that focuses on the internal, right? How that employee is dealing with technology, but also externally. Is there what we call telepressure? Are we putting too much pressure on that employee to quickly respond? What we oftentimes talk about is that technology has moved so rapidly, but we have not advanced to create the social antibodies against this. We have not evolved as a society with social norms to determine how best to deal with these issues. So to kind of reiterate some of these points, externally, let's look at some of these, right? How many of you get too many emails? It's actually kind of embarrassing that in 2016, I'm still even talking about emails, right? If you talk to somebody 10 years ago, they would say, come on. That shows you how difficult this issue is. Because if we cannot even solve the problem of too many emails after 20 some odd years, it shows you how difficult this is going to be. Oftentimes, our technology is set up with a slot machine mentality. So when you think about slot machines and why gambling can be, quote unquote, addictive for a lot of people, it's because of the randomness of it. Every time you pull a lever on a slot machine, you do not know if you're going to win, if you're going to lose, what characters are going to come up. That can be very pleasurable because every time we pull, we don't know what we're going to get. It's very similar to every time Facebook tells me I have a notification. Is it something important? Is it somebody you respect? Is it a friend? Or is it just a notification for an event that you're not going to attend? You don't know, but you check it. And that's the important part, right? A new study just came out that the average individual now spends up to 50 minutes a day on Facebook. Significant period of time. You're probably thinking, well, hopefully you're not thinking, but maybe you are. Who cares? What does it matter if we have a distracted workplace? Because some commentators argue that this is just a modern workplace, that we as humans are going to evolve to just being perpetually distracted. I don't think so, and here's why. A distracted workplace is an unhealthy workplace because being constantly distracted is mentally and physically exhausting. Have you ever talked to a performer? Have you ever talked to a musician? Sometimes if you're talking to them off stage, They're not the same person they were on stage. And you might think, geez, they were so friendly on stage. They had so much energy. How come off stage they seem shy? Or they didn't seem to have a lot of energy? Well, think about that for a minute. That's because when a person is performing, they are, quote unquote, on. They bring a certain level of energy. They have a certain amount of awareness. This is the frustration that a lot of us feel by constantly being on with our smartphones, right? We're firing at all engines. This can be a little exhausting, and hence why a lot of people talk about plans to unplug. The mental aspect, as I discussed with the stress of always being on, we also have the issue of poor sleep, right? A lot of studies show the connection between the blue light that's emitted from smartphones and other electronic devices awakens our system, right? So there's a major distinction between reading a book at night and checking your phone. It's one of my favorite quotes from Nicholas Carr. Nicholas Carr, the former editor-in-chief at the Harvard Business Review, also wrote a great book called The Shallows. A few years ago in 2008, he wrote, Is Google Making Us Stupid? An article that was very influential in Atlantic magazine. You see what he is writing. That he no longer is able to think deeply. He is no longer able to have deep thoughts. But when we were standing up, we all said that at our workplace, in order to be successful, we need to think deeply. We need to have those moments. Something is amiss, right? But it's not all doom and gloom, because there's a lot of positive on the horizon, because there's a lot of new products coming out, and there's also a lot of awareness. I think this is a testament to this awareness. By me even being up here is showcasing that we are reaching that tipping point when enough people have said, yes, technology is great, but we need to use it correctly to maximize productivity. We're not doing away with it, but we are going to treat it differently so that it's not interrupting something that we find important. And what we find important as knowledge workers, since again, we are not physically producing widgets that move at a standard period of time anymore, we need those moments where nobody is knocking at the physical door or the proverbial door. Nobody is interrupting you. Right? And that's why, again, I just want you to visualize that and think about your own workplace. It is two-pronged, and what a lot of people are doing to change the two-pronged nature of external and internal is they're creating certain time locks, if you will. Believe it or not, a lot of the most innovative workplaces with technology have been tech companies. And even though that might seem ironic, it usually comes from the fact that these are individuals who realize the power of technology to either be positive or to be negative. One of the most influential ones is Google's Search Inside Yourself program, which I know Chris Flack, right? I think you attended that. The important part that these are companies that realize this is a struggle, and this is something we have to deal with. So in a recent study by Career Builder, they asked managers what was so distracting in the workplace. No surprise, look what's coming up, right? Our mobile phones, the internet, social media. The key part is that these are areas that we need to sequester away in order to do our best work. I like to say, if left to our own devices, we'll always be on them. And that's the issue. What I was excited about coming to Ireland is when I think about Ireland, when I think about the Irish, I think of soulful, right? I think of writers. A famous writer in the United States, Jonathan Franzen, he has gone so far to make a PC, right? He uses this old Dell, where he takes off the internet, he takes off all social media, because what he found and what he said publicly is that he cannot do any meaningful work with the potential for distraction. What we need to understand in the workplace, crafting this, is that willpower works like a muscle that gets fatigued. Since we're constantly utilizing our willpower, we're out of willpower, right? So again, if left to our own devices, we'll always be on them. Looks like I'm nearing the end, so I can leave you with this final thought. A distracted workplace is an unhealthy workplace. We know we're facing so many distractions, but this is where we have an opportunity to utilize some of the new tools coming out to create a workplace where, as knowledge workers, we respect the time and energy and focus that's needed to maximize productivity. Productivity is not, again, directly related to time. It's related to our focus. So by creating a healthy workplace with tech-life balance, we can create a productive workplace. Thank you.